Okay.
Hello, 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 everyone. And I'm so excited to bring to you my new project. For those that have been watching this series and those that are new to the series, my name is Carla Marie Williams, and I am an author. I am a wife of almost 30 years. I am a mother of six, a grandmother of two, and a foster care adoption advocate across the globe. But
Mhm.
most importantly, my passion is to inspire moms. And I'm so excited to introduce to you my new project, which is my book, Dear Lord, What's Next? Hopefully, you can see that. Um, Embracing the next phase of life as your kids launch into adulthood. And so we're going to be talking about that. Hopefully, maybe you've seen the other interviews that I've done with all of the amazing moms that I've had the opportunity to have this conversation with, or not. You'll need to go back and do that. This will be yet another amazing interview with another amazing mom. But before we get started, I kind of want to talk about what phase of life I am in right now. I have four adult children, two of which are out of the home, two of which are at home. I have a son that is about to turn an adult. He'll be 18 this year. And then I have a 16-year-old. So, those that have been following me for years on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you have gotten to know me, you've probably seen my kids grow up through a lot of the homeschool content and the books that I've written and things of that nature. Well, they're not so little anymore. And that's what we're here to talk about. Um, so before we get started and I introduce my amazing guest, I am going to read a little excerpt from the introduction of my book, Dear Lord, What's Next? It all happened so fast. Where do I go from here? I am stuck at a crossroads between frantically searching for the pause button and wanting to press the forward button. Have you been there? Are you there right now? All the feelings all at once. And so, if you're listening to this or have listened to the other recordings, I'm telling you, you're probably there. All the feelings, all at once, all the things, right? Well, I want to introduce you to an amazing mom who is reinventing herself in this season of her life. Um, and we're going to be talking about all the things. And hopefully, you'll be able to find yourself in this interview and the other interviews, as well as in the book, because I wrote it just for you. So I would like to introduce Belinda Bullard. She is a believer, a wife, a mom of three whom she homeschooled. She is an author and creator of the Blessed Heritage curriculum and a gardening enthusiast. And so, Belinda, thank you so, so much for being a part of this conversation. I'm so excited about the wisdom that you're going to share with us and all of the amazing things that the moms are going to get out of this interview. So, thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you, Carla, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So give us a little idea of your motherhood journey, like from, like a really short recap of way back then to present day. How have things unfolded as a mom for you?
Okay, well, I guess where I should start is that I wasn't always a stay-at-home mom. I did work out in corporate America for a number of years. Even when we had our oldest two children, I was still working and they were in daycare. And at some point, through a various series of circumstances, when we had our third child, we decided we wanted to pursue homeschooling, and the Lord seemed to confirm that in several ways. This was not I woke up in the middle of the night and got this urge. It's a lot of people talk about homeschooling, but it was really more of a practical, this is how we can make this work. I was going to be leaving my job. We were going to be changing drastically from trying to chase that American dream, which had my husband and I both all over the country at different times, and our kids were in daycares, and sometimes one of us would forget which one was supposed to pick the other one up, and it was just bad. It was a situation we wanted to get free of. And we were able to make that work in part by homeschooling our children and just having everybody with us. So where we began was with an 8-year old. Our oldest was getting ready to go I'm sorry, she was 7. She's getting ready to go into second grade. Our youngest, our son in the middle, had completed K3 and K4, traditional pre-K, was
Right.
getting ready to go into kindergarten. And then we had a newborn. We literally started with her in my arms like this. Uh, so that's where we began our journey. And that was almost 20 years ago.
Wow.
We homeschooled. I worked part time during that time. And yeah, now all of our kids have graduated. We have 2 that are full grown adults, younger adults. And then we have one who is a young adult who is a junior in college this year. And so, if the Lord says the same, she's got at most a year until
Okay.
she's gonna get the boot and time to flee the nest. So
Right. I understand. And
time to
I
stretch your
understand.
wings.
Figuratively and physically and financially, right?
Yes, yes, all off the family payroll. That was the goal.
Yes. It sounds a lot like when we got started, um, or when we first, became parents. We had tried so hard for so long. And
Mhm.
then we adopted 2 children. And I tried to go back to work 3 months after their adoption, and they were 3 and 2 years old then.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it was hard, but we made it work. And then their little brother was born. So we get this
Mhm.
phone call, hey, you having siblings? So we're like, okay. And so I tried to be super mom with 3 kids under 3 in daycare
Uh-huh.
and work, like
Mhm.
HR manager over 7 plants, right? So that
Right,
was pretty
right.
crazy. And woo, it lasted maybe 5 months
Mhm.
before I resigned. And I've been home ever since. That was 2007. I tried my hardest, but it was just like, oh, I couldn't make it work. And I started to not care so much about my career
Right,
anymore.
right.
And
Mhm.
that's what I knew, like, okay, this just doesn't matter. My spunk, my oomph wasn't there anymore.
Mhm.
So very
Mhm.
similar. You just felt like we need to approach this differently.
That's right. That's right. The grace it just left that season. It wasn't a
It did.
bad season, but it was just no longer the season for you. Mhm.
Right.
Or for me.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yep. So let's what would you say? This is a question I ask everyone, and
Mhm.
it's different for some, same for others, but how would you say your relationship with your children um has changed as they've become adults and flown the nest? What would
Um,
how has that changed?
I think the biggest thing is that we have raised them to the point one where they all know Christ now, and
Hmm.
that is the biggest blessing that I can say. It wasn't always that way, but now everybody has their own relationship with Jesus Christ and knows Him as their Lord and Savior, and that
That's amazing.
ultimately shapes everything else that I'm about to say. So we did the tough things as parents so that we could be friends. And that's some of the best advice I heard actually from one of our pastor's wives at one time. She said, if you'll be a parent to them now, you'll be their friend later.
That's
And that's where we are. I
that's
really do.
beautiful.
It was profound. It was simple, but it was
Yeah.
profound. If you're
Mhm.
willing to do the hard things that we aren't always willing to do and that aren't
Right.
easy for us,
Yeah.
uh, then later when we just want to step in as sister in Christ or girlfriend or my I laugh with my girls now about women's things,
Yeah.
the season I'm in versus the season they're in, and I have them laughing about hot flashes and all this other stuff. But
I enjoy those
anyway,
conversations with my girls.
I tell them it's coming, it's coming.
Yeah. They're on the
But
beginning end, and we're on
yeah,
the
yeah.
opposite end.
It's so far away, Carla. They can't even see it right now.
Right.
It's
That's
like
funny.
Dorothy when she started on the yellow brick road.
Mhm.
Oz was nowhere in sight.
Right.
But
That
anyway,
is powerful. That is a
it,
really powerful
it was
concept. And I
for
hope those
me.
that are listening have picked up on that. That you do the
Hmm.
hard things now, be the parent now, and you could be the friend later.
Yeah,
And I'll
yeah.
say that's one of my favorite parts
Hmm.
of this season is being able to
Hmm.
talk with my kids and it not be instruction
Yeah,
or, or advice, but it just be friendship.
yeah.
And it's really fun. It's enjoyable. So thank you for pointing that out and
Oh,
sharing that
sure.
because
And sometimes they may still need instruction or
yeah,
advice, but
absolutely.
I am quicker to back up and try to listen and hear before I just jump in with do this, do that, do such and such. I try to come at it as if I were you,
Mm.
or you might think about, and I tell them why. And you also have to be comfortable with the fact that sometimes they're going to say no. I'm going to
Right.
do it a different way, and
Yeah.
that's not easy either
And not
because
be
old
offended
school.
out.
Oh yeah, old school parent is like, I know she didn't just say no to me.
Right. That is
So
hilarious. And it's
there's a
so true.
comfort level with that we have to grow into in helping them grow.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And 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 I think we grow in learning how to back off and how
Yeah,
to choose our moments
yeah,
and how to enter doors that they open
yeah. Absolutely,
and stay out
absolutely.
of doors that they don't.
That's right. And don't come in kicking it down.
Right.
Enter gently, like the guests that you are in their
Yeah.
adult lives, and learn how to come in as a friend and say, have you thought about,
Right.
rather than our old approach.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Wow. That's pretty powerful. That's pretty powerful. That,
I'm trying. I'm trying.
yeah. In my in my book, there's a chapter called From Parent to Advisor. And that's
Hmm.
really what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Advisors wait for your need to be um,
Hmm.
shared, right? They
Hmm.
don't just
Hmm.
come in and say, hey, just change all of this, do all of this. They're like, okay, where are your needs? What specifically can I help you with? And then
Right.
you ask them for their
Right. Right.
for their opinion and their thoughts
Hmm.
on that. And that's kind of the role that you take on. An older,
Absolutely.
wiser friend, an advisor,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
and they trust you when they don't feel like they're being judged and just instructed all the time.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, I hear really sad stories sometimes of kids like putting up such a thick wall with their
Yeah.
parent because the parents did not do well at transitioning and
Yeah.
changing the way that they approach their relationship with their kids. Um,
Hmm.
and I always said I didn't want to be that. I don't want to be like that with my kids. I don't want to be that kind of in-law,
Hmm.
where I'm meddlesome or, judgmental or always looking for, a way to
Hmm.
insert thoughts and opinions. I really
Hmm.
want to have a relationship with my kids in their adulthood. And you have to do a lot of changing and eating humble
Yeah.
pie and zipping
Yeah.
your lips even when you want to scream
Right.
if you
Right.
want that to
Hmm.
happen. So
Hmm.
listen to
Hmm.
that, moms. Listen to that. It will do you well to listen to that advice. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so as you got closer to an empty nest, what would you say? Um, what were some of your desires and plans, or how did you visualize this next season of your life? Um,
We had a different ending just because of when we ended. And this is total transparency with what
mhm.
happened. Our youngest is our social butterfly. And as the older two took off, I think she liked homeschooling less and less. Uh, and that's real for some. I want to
Mhm.
say that because so many times we have this image of homeschooling that our kids are just going to love it,
Right.
and that they're going to just skip around the table and we're dancing with the broom and so forth and so on. But she really did not like being here with just mom.
Right.
It did not help that mom was an introvert, so mom never had to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And so mom had to make a lot of concessions for her and uh, to help her get out, to help her do things, to just be, especially before she was able to drive. I had to stretch myself and go places I didn't always want to go. One of the things that happened for me was that we got to sit just the two of us at the table, and
Mhm.
she would often just talk about things. And I would not have had that opportunity if we hadn't been in the situation we were in, because
Mhm.
whether or not she realized it, whether or not she realizes it even now, we built a lot of mother and daughter time with just her, me being there, doing whatever. I could be writing, I could be reading, but she was really just sharing whatever was on her mind. In the true fashion of an extrovert, she talked out loud to think, and it was okay. I'd sit there and I'd listen, and what do you think about? Well, have you thought, again, we just go back and forth, back and forth. So those days were precious for me.
Mhm.
Her, probably not so much, not yet anyway. Um,
Right.
COVID then happened. And so, in the midst of me trying to create this environment for her that would somewhat fill her need to be social, the
Mhm.
world shut down and
Wow.
we couldn't take her any place if we wanted to.
Right.
And that took out that social aspect. So I said that to say that by the time we ended, we didn't end gloriously, we didn't end ceremoniously. I was dragging to the finish line as a
Can
parent.
imagine.
I
Yeah.
really was just happy to be done. And
Yeah.
I had no vision for the future. I was just thankful that we were done. But
Yeah, I understand. I have
in the
one
meantime,
left, so I get it.
yeah, yeah. So, in the meantime, what happened that I did not realize was taking on such a role in my life was this switch into gardening.
Mm.
As we aged, as we began to deal with various aging issues, you hurt yourself falling asleep and that kind of stuff. If you sleep wrong, and,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, God. My knees worked this morning. That whole deal. One of the things we began to discover was the power of food as medicine. And so gardening took on a whole new level for us. And it really did become not just a hobby, but a way to keep our bodies healthy and to help us heal. And we began to learn more about medicinal herbs. We began to know more about the power of vegetables in their organic form. And that catapulted into an urban homestead now, a small business now, in which we sell our extras, and we sell our wares. And none of that did I have a vision for back in 2020, 2021. But I am very, very thankful that that happened. One of the things I did do right before COVID was, because of this budding passion, I got my Master Gardener certification through our one of the
Awesome.
state colleges here. And a month after that was when everything shut down and you couldn't go get your certification hours because people didn't even want you working in the fields. They didn't want you anywhere near the
Other people.
possibility of endangering someone else.
Hmm.
But I was eventually able to do that. And it's just really, that is probably where I am now. It went on to become a part time job in that arena. I work at a senior citizens facility, and we make sure that they have organic vegetables and fruits to
Right.
partner with their Meals on Wheels. And that's been one of my heart's true joys, is the fact that we can give them a whole foods experience given that
Wow.
many of them are people who would not get that otherwise. Meals on Wheels is a certain
Right.
income level, certain amount of mobility or lack thereof. So you're not always dealing with the freshest of foods. You're mainly just trying to make sure they have something. And
Right.
many times that food is processed because it's typical institutional
Right.
food. So to be able to pack in there an eggplant or green beans or tomatoes that came straight from a garden is just
That's awesome.
gosh, it's just so rewarding for me.
Yeah.
And that started from our own journey. So we didn't have a vision, but we grew as the vision grew, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's it's important you point that out because you're going to have a lot of people watching this and they're like, I never even thought about the next phase. I didn't
Mm-hmm,
have a plan. I've been
mm-hmm,
so consumed with my kids and the
mm-hmm,
now that I haven't really thought about it. But I think what's most important is flexibility and willingness
mm-hmm,
to allow God to move the way he moves. And
mm-hmm,
sometimes that's unexpected.
mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's not this grand master plan checklist or, bucket
Exactly.
list.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's just being open,
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
using the gifts, the talents and passions that you have, like you've done,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
seeing where it goes. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful that it went from, something very personal to
Yeah.
now you being able to bless someone, many other people, hundreds of other people with the work
Mm-hmm.
that you do. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
You
thank
talk about, oh, I'm sorry.
you. Go ahead.
You talk some about unexpected things that occur as you are moving forward in your vision and moving forward in your home, in your post homeschooling life. And this was one of the things that came unexpectedly in a good way.
Right.
Wasn't unfortunate at all. It was just a transition that, as you said, we were open to. And
Mhm.
through that open door came this wonderful opportunity to be a blessing to so many people around us. And I'm thankful for that.
That's awesome. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that if I remember correctly, you also work in other areas when it comes to gardening. And can you share a little bit more about that?
Well, we have a small business that is named after my husband's father, my father-in-law.
Okay.
Just as a quick backdrop, it was my father-in-law who came out in 2011 and dug the first little square or rectangle because he wanted the kids to have something to remember him by. And you know how these things go. The kids were excited, but ultimately it became mine and my husband's, more so my husband's
Right.
garden, especially in Texas heat. So they weren't
Yeah.
as excited then. So, so at we had fits and starts because it wasn't something we were really looking to do.
Right.
Uh, and so by the time we began to have this epiphany about no dig, no till gardening, and we began to learn things about garden towers and vertical gardening, and things that were easier on the body.
Yeah.
That's been has been a particular struggle for me. I've shared before in other places. I am at this point an arthritis warrior. So
Okay.
my hips and whatever else is happening on that particular day may not want to get all the way down on the ground, and
Right.
certainly need a plan to get back up. Right. So
Right.
so
That's true.
no dig, no till, and vertical garden towers and raised beds. Those things have been just really life changing for me. Literally, they allow me to keep doing what it is we enjoy doing so much. And so we've added quail to the mix. So, and we
Oh,
do all this out in the suburbs. We use our little quail eggs and we use the manure to build a garden. And again, we have the vegetables we sell to markets that are in the area. We are also expanding our product line. So it's been this whole iteration that when you step back and look, it's just kind of mind boggling that it really came to what it has. But we
yeah.
enjoy it. And
Like, look
it's
what we did.
exactly, exactly. And it's really become kind of our into retirement thing to do. So
That's
And it's
awesome.
lovely that we walk into it together. Hmm.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not my
beautiful.
thing. It's not his thing. It's our thing. Hmm.
And you know what's interesting about that? In my book, I talk about marriage in two different chapters.
Uh-huh.
In the beginning of the book, I talk about um, just maintaining that relationship, even in
Yeah.
the midst of parenting,
Yeah.
so that later on,
Hmm.
you're not having to get to know each other again, but that
Hmm.
it's been a continuation for those last 30 years, right? Um,
Absolutely.
and so, but in the back of the book, I talk more about the second act of marriage. And you just
Mm-hmm.
touched on something so very important is that
Hmm.
especially when a couple has two separate careers,
Hmm.
you can have a great marriage and have two separate careers, right?
Right.
Uh, but there's always a part of their life and a part of your life that they're
Right.
not involved in, right? Unless you own a
Hmm.
business
Hmm.
together, for that long. But
Hmm.
in the second act of marriage, it's beautiful to have something that you share together. A shared passion
Yeah.
is very
Hmm.
enjoyable, to be able to have.
Hmm.
I know that I myself share your passion for gardening, and I know that you and I share funny jokes and
Uh-huh.
gardening memes and things of that nature. But
Right. Right.
it is definitely has been, I think this will be my fifth year, and it has been a
Hmm.
place of peace and solitude, and I just love it. I love it so much.
Hmm.
To the point where I'm, looking at my backyard and nudging my husband to give me yet a little bit more square feet, just
Yeah. Yeah.
three more, three
Oh
more
my
fruit
gosh.
trees
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
here and there. But he loves it. I mean, the kids
I
don't eat
get
the
it.
food as much, but
Uh-huh.
he doesn't even like in the wintertime, he doesn't even want tomatoes from the store. He doesn't eat tomatoes unless they're from
I I feel like I'm cheating on my garden when I go and
yes.
get a store-bought tomato. And
Yep, cucumbers,
I've
all of
become
that.
such a snob. Oh my gosh. We go places and get salad. I'm sitting there.
Right.
I can do better than this at home. And one of the things you learn, of course, the reason why we have this huge distribution system with food, I don't want to get off on this too much,
Uh,
but the reason we have this huge distribution system is because when you garden, you learn that you can't grow everything all year. There is a season when you can't grow a tomato if you wanted to.
exactly.
And so we have to go to the grocery store and get these things. But that too has been a learning curve because we truly do use the garden for the food. So it means that there are certain things we can't eat at certain times of year.
Right.
And that's been one of the biggest challenges is because again, when I go to the grocery store and I buy that whatever it is that I can't grow in the yard at that time, tomatoes are a quick one because I honestly, I'm looking at the container and I'm mad with myself and feeling apologetic and like I let myself down somehow.
So funny. Yeah.
So bad. It's so
Definitely
bad.
share the feeling. So, um, I love how what was just I'd say a hobby or an
Hmm.
interest turned into your grand plan,
Hmm.
something that you guys share and are moving forward to develop. And I'm sure that it's probably, I mean, if I talk to you next year, it'll probably be on a whole nother level. Um, because I
From
just,
your mouth to his ears.
yeah, I am sure it will be just because I can see the passion there in you.
Oh yeah.
But one of the things that I wanted to talk about that I talk about in the book, and a lot of people don't consider this, is friendships during this
Hmm.
season. I I know with myself, a lot of my friendships, um, we had to just give each other grace for the fact that, there weren't going to be a lot of times or moments when we were able to get together because
Yeah.
we were so
Yeah.
consumed with our kids, especially as the kids got older and more involved in activities and things of that nature.
Hmm.
Um, we maintain those relationships in a certain way because our life required us to be twice a year friends. You know what I mean? As far as getting
Mhm,
together, that
mhm,
kind of thing.
mhm.
Um, but, you know, can you attest to how or share how your friendships have changed and maybe some ways that moms can embrace their friendships in a different way during this season?
Okay. Well, I meant to say something even back when we were talking about marriage, and that is, I really think you have to acknowledge that you are not the person you were when you began homeschooling. Homeschooling for me was, I started 20 some odd year, almost 20 some odd years ago. So we have to rediscover who we are. If you think about it, Carla, the minute that we find out somebody says you're pregnant, you immediately become second. You
Yeah,
can't eat what you used to eat. You can't drink everything you used to drink. You can't do everything you used to do. And from that time on, when you have children, as you're going through whatever is their process, even if they go to a traditional school, you really are on the back burner. You are so and so's mom. That's how you
right.
introduce yourself when you go to baseball and dance and whatever else. And so we have to rediscover who we are. And guess what? Who we were in our 30s when I started homeschooling is not who we are in now when you're done.
Right.
So what I'm learning is one, that there are seasons, and it's not that I would not embrace anyone,
Mhm.
but I know that I'm not a homeschooling mom anymore. And so
Yeah,
there are friends who were dear friends for 20 years that I still text and I catch up to, hey, what are your kids doing now? But I also realize that that season of talking, every week or every month or whatever
right,
has changed. And
right.
and you have to be okay with that.
Hmm.
That it's not a mean or an evil thing, but it's just not, again, this season. That said, one of my greatest joys has been that I've met people like you who are homeschooling moms, but we also share a passion for gardening. And
Yes.
so we just kind of bridged right over into this whole new era.
Right.
There's you, and there's probably about five or six more friends that I can think of immediately. And we all homeschooled our kids together, and now we're all out in the garden together.
Right.
And that's been so much fun for me. But I think that first out of for before you really think about your friends and where you are, I think you have to give thought to where you are as a person and what is it
Right.
that you truly need in this season. So for me, I do have a couple of friends who we're done homeschooling. And again, we don't talk as much, but I'm still there for support. We're still there. I think social media has changed the game a lot
Yes,
because it is
that's
much
true.
easier to keep up with people now than when you had to pick up a phone and talk. Now I may not see you, but I
Right.
can like what you do. I can comment. I can, in that way
Right.
support you.
True.
but but I think you have to one, rediscover who you are, and it's probably not going to be the same person you were when you were home raising that kid.
Right.
uh then going back to marriage, my husband's and my relationship is different now because
Yeah.
we do have different needs and different needs from each other. Some days when I don't work every day, some days I'll hop in the car and ride around with him, and I'm not doing anything. I'm just keeping him company, and he
Right.
enjoys it. So, um,
True.
it's just kind of a companionship thing that we do. That, guess what? We didn't get to do that when we were raising kids, because if we both got in the car, we had three other folks that were going to get in the car, and our
Right.
conversation was generally whatever they wanted to talk about. And and at some
Yes.
point, if you were to be out long enough, you had to feed them. So but I think key to that is understanding you. And then from there, understanding what you need from the world around you,
Yes.
whether it is to gently uh, back up from some people for no ill reason, just you
Right.
don't have as much in common anymore. Uh, Continue with the people that you can continue with, like you and I, who continue to share this avid gardening passion.
Uh,
And then, really critically, from my best friend, my husband, who am I now? And what is it that I need from him? And being able to communicate that in a loving way that says, hey, um, this is what's going on with me right now, especially as
yeah,
women, we go through so many
absolutely.
changes, and this is what I need from you. This is what, this is how you can help me, and tell me how to support you as well.
Right. It's so
Mm-hmm.
important. And, one of the things that I talk about in the book, in that particular chapter in the book about friendship, is knowing how to be a good friend,
Mm-hmm.
the do's and don'ts of being a good friend,
Mm-hmm.
and just knowing when a season is over,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and being open to new friends.
Yeah.
I think, sometimes as we get older or we go through certain circumstances, we might shut ourselves off, or um, like the friend factory is closed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I I can say for myself in the past that I've been in seasons like that where I was like, I really don't want to meet any. I'm not added to the friend box right now. And I know that sounds crazy saying it,
Mm-hmm.
but I think
Mm-hmm.
that we all have gone through that
Oh
phase in
yeah.
parts of
Oh
our
yeah.
lives. And I think it's important
Mm-hmm.
for moms in this season to be open to new friendships,
Uh-huh.
and to be open to walk away from ones that are not,
Yeah.
for this season. And
Yeah.
both of those things are hard.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to
Mm-hmm.
put yourself out there in this season to make new friendships. But a lot of times, what happens is that when you have more time to focus on your interest and your passions, you don't have all of the kid stuff, in the
Right.
mix.
Right.
Then you find you're able to connect with people that also have that passion, like we've talked about,
For
right?
sure. For
Um,
sure. Mm-hmm.
and then that is a way to build new friendships, based on
Right.
actual interest instead of being David's mom.
Right.
you know
Exactly. Exactly.
so it's
Mm-hmm.
I think that both of those things are equally important. um
I think too, and maybe it's because as an introvert, I've never had to have this wealth of friends. I think you're able to make a deeper connection,
yeah,
because you don't have all of these distractions and things necessarily going on,
yeah,
unless you create them. But I think when you really center into who am I in this season and what is it that I need, then you may have, a few, whatever you consider to be a few people around. And those people, not only do I share gardening, but we also talk about what's going on in our lives, what's
yeah,
happening with these grown-ups, what
right.
that are now, yeah, what's happening with these crazy people we've
Right,
raised, and and how can I really be a blessing to you? And you don't have to do that with 30, 40 people anymore, because all of y'all are in the co-op together.
right,
You can focus
exactly,
in on those 5 or 10 people that, for whatever reason, they are now in this season, and this one needs me in this way, this one doesn't need me, and then I don't have to call her anymore and ask curriculum questions and
right,
this kind of thing, but I can still just, hey, hadn't heard from you in a minute, is everything okay? Don't want to take anything for granted. Boom. And that
right.
may be all she needs. Yeah.
That's true.
So
It's
mm-hmm,
interesting
mm-hmm,
too how lifelong friendships. I have a handful of lifelong friendships that I absolutely cherish, right?
mm-hmm,
And there are, most of them we raised our kids together, or we started life together. We got married, we're in each
mm-hmm,
other's weddings, and
mm-hmm,
we all started families around the same time. But I notice a lot of times with young moms, and that's in my experience, is that we're we were often not as honest with each other
mm-hmm.
about our challenges because everybody just wants to be a good mom. And so you
Yeah.
don't always share the hard stuff, and then when
Yeah.
you get on the other end, you're like, girl, I hear you. Let's talk about it, because
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we recognize that we all have our stuff. And like you said,
Yeah.
it makes it easier to connect on a deeper level. So,
I uh I was going to say, I heard the term once called mom petition, like competition, mom petition.
yeah,
And I think that that has to do with, especially when you are a homeschooler, we are all fighting the same fight in some sense, in that we need to show that this works.
yeah,
Because someone around you is challenging you, or is not even challenging necessarily, but maybe just watching to
yeah,
see it can are they really going to do this, is this really going to happen, are your kids okay, that
right.
kind of thing. And so I think that as I often say, we have to speak and champion the cause before we really even know if it's going to work,
Yeah,
because of the need to kind of do that for the sake of those around you.
right.
And I think it does put us in the interesting position of, my kid's doing this, my kid's doing that. And of course, there's that dreaded socialization. We're all about this, and we're in that, we're involved here and we're involved there. And I think as you get older and you settle into what is your truth, you become much more candid about the fact that, hey, this is who I am.
Mhm.
You become much more understanding of other people's truths, which is
Right.
sometimes what cause changes that season, right?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah, and you pick out, okay, this person's here to stay. This person, is a good 20-year run, but
Right.
keep it moving and we'll be all right.
Right. You know what's interesting? And I want to touch on before I have a few more questions for you before we
Okay.
wrap up, but I wanted to touch on back in the from parent to advisor. There is part that I talk about in the book that we cannot, in capital letters, cannot attach our self-worth, our
Mhm.
esteem,
Mhm.
and our just our worth as a person based
Mhm.
on the outcomes and choices of our children.
Yeah.
And
That's
a
good.
lot of times, I think women in our stage
Mhm.
that are either close to an empty nest or are in the midst of that season right now,
Mhm.
um, they have determined in their mind um,
Mhm.
that based on whatever successes or failures or situations arise in their adult children's lives, that is calculated based on their failure or their success.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and so, for all of those listening, let that go. Your worth is
Yeah.
not attached
Yeah.
to the outcomes of your
Mhm.
children's lives or by the choices that they make. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that goes back to identity in Christ, and that could be a whole podcast by itself. So I,
Right.
I
Right.
digress. I'll back
Mhm.
up off of that, but you get what I'm saying.
I
Um,
was about to jump
so
in, but
yeah,
I will help us keep on track. Yeah.
right. So one of the
I'll
things
just say amen.
right. One of the things that I wanted to ask you is what do you want your legacy to be? In the book, the last chapter is about legacy. And we talk, a lot of people think about, I left my kids millions of dollars and that they feel like that's their legacy. But there's so many other parts of legacy. There's love, there is compassion, there is your body of work, what you've taught them. Um, and then there is how you have overall impacted your life and the lives of others, right? And so, for
Mhm.
you, what would you say you want yourself and your husband, but we're talking to you, your legacy to be um, overall?
It's a good question, and it's a great question. And I honestly hadn't given a whole lot of thought to it. But I think if there were two things that I had to say, it would, one, be that I want our kids to understand the deeper love of Christ through the deeper love that we have had for them. Um, if you think about it, there are so many, especially from a certain generation. You know, our parents, our grandparents, because of what they came through in life, love looked very different.
Yes.
And
Very true.
maybe love looked more like discipline and
Yeah.
obedience, not a lot of grace, not a lot of mercy.
Hmm.
And I want our kids to truly appreciate where we are as a family, you know, that I can love on them even when they don't want to be hugged, even when they take the kisses for granted, even when they take the, you know, the I love yous, the weekly affirmations I still send, and all of that. Even when they take all of that stuff for granted, is to understand that, you know, we loved them to life, not to death. We loved
Right.
them to life. And I want to see them do that in their own kids' life. It's not necessarily about career or about accomplishments, even though our kids have done extremely well. And I am so proud of all three of them and what they've been able to do thus far with their lives. But I really want them to understand love of their children. I also want them to understand love of people around them, love of, you know, the scripture says, love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, but also to love on people.
Yes.
And I want them to be able to love and serve people as well, and to
That's awesome.
truly pour something into somebody else that a lot of people just don't have.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
So our one of our goals, just as an example, we always wanted each of the kids to go to an overseas mission trip when they were in high school, and we were successful at being able to send all three of them. The reason that we really wanted them to do that was because we wanted them to understand what how blessed they were, and
Mm.
in the midst of all of their first world problems, to really
Right.
get a look at what it looks like when you don't have choices
Yeah.
sometimes. um and so we just wanted them to be in places where they could minister and they could serve to somebody who, if they didn't get it done, it wasn't going to get done. And that's an experience I hope they take with them throughout their lives, is to be able to, as our pastor says, bless somebody who can't bless you back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you. That's really
You are
good.
welcome.
That's very good.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what would you say is your favorite chapter in the book, or say, or favorite topic? What stood out the most to you in the book? I think you're freezing up a little bit.
So you asked me about my favorite part of the book, and let me say there are several favorite parts. One part that I was thinking about today was the whole idea about kids who are adults, but for whatever reason, they're still in your home. They have not left yet. And though our kids are, our youngest is a college student, our older two are away from home, we still have the Christmas breaks. We still have the spring breaks. We still have summer breaks at times. So a few weeks she's here before she's going off to do other things, where she is home. And we have to navigate her being a young adult and us being older adults who still have rules, who still have boundaries, who still have places and expectations that she has to meet. So I think that that was one of the more uh, the aha moments, the thing that made me ponder a little more how it is that we strike that balance between recognizing who she is as a young adult, but who we are as people who still expect a level of respect. Uh,
Yeah, that's
that
good.
was probably the part that I pondered the most.
Awesome. That's awesome. So, one last thing I'd like to ask you to share with the moms that are watching and those that will be reading the book. What would be your overall advice for moms that are entering into this phase of their life? what would be your advice for them in this moment?
I would go back to taking the time to discover who you are. That is not a process you can necessarily rush. It's okay to not understand it right now, but I would say that it is a very meaningful exercise to just understand who you are in this season, how you've changed, what you like, what you don't like. I think that's going to be critical because if you're not understanding who you are, then you are trying to meet other people's expectations of who you should be. And that's a dangerous place to be. And it's not a fruitful or productive place in any way for you to be. So take the time to understand who you are in this season and then surround yourself. Be okay with surrounding yourself with the things that now help you become a better version of this you, if that
That's
makes sense.
awesome. Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
that's amazing. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Before we end, I wanted to share a short part of the introduction. What happens when the last one walks out the door? Who am I outside of motherhood? What do I want to do, see, or experience in the next phase of my life?
Mhm.
What dreams do I want to pursue? What realm does God desire for me to walk in? Dear Lord, what's next? And those may be
Mhm.
the questions that you're asking yourself as you're watching these interviews. They may be the questions that you're asking yourself as you're reading the book. In the back of every chapter, there are questions to help you ponder and think about the content of the chapter and how you want to move forward in this phase of your life. But
Mhm.
I just wanted to let everybody know that Dear Lord, What's Next is going to be available on Amazon on April 26th. Every week leading up to that, you will see one of these interviews to be able to enjoy these amazing moms that have so much wisdom to share. Thank you so much, Belinda. I
Thank
just
you.
I just
Thank you. I
blessed my
really mean
socks off today with so much
it.
wisdom and tips for moms. And so I walk away enriched by what you have shared today. And
Thank
so for
you.
all of those that are watching, um, avail yourself to these interviews. If you have to watch them over and over, please do. I wrote the book
Mhm.
and I created this series because I wanted to be a blessing to moms that are entering this phase or in the midst of this new phase, their second act. And I hope this was a blessing to you. And get your book on April 26th. You can get it for yourself, your mom, your daughters, your neighbors, your friends, your sisters, anyone, any woman can definitely, or any mom, I guess I should say, can definitely benefit from the information and the content in the book and in this series. So thanks
Mhm.
again for everybody for watching and get your book on April 26th. Thank you. Bye.
Yep. Bye.